Palestinian Authority orders suspension of Al Jazeera broadcasts. 10 killed after man drives into New Year celebrations crowd. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Mohan Priya. You're watching World Today. The Palestinian Authority on Wednesday ordered the suspension of broadcasts by Qatar-based Al Jazeera across the Palestinian territories, accusing the network of airing inciting content. The decision also includes temporarily freezing the work of all journalists, employees, crew and affiliated channels. According to the Palestinian Authority, this decision comes in response to Al Jazeera's insistence on broadcasting inciting content and reports characterized by misinformation, incitement, sedition and interference in Palestinian internal affairs. Palestinian freedom fighter group Hamas condemned the decision to ban the network. Islamic Jihad, allied with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, also criticized the decision. The Palestinian Authority's decision comes more than 3 months after Israeli forces raided the network's office in Ramallah. The network is already banned from broadcasting from Israel amid a long-running feud with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which has only worsened during the ongoing war in Gaza. 10 people were killed when more than 35 others were injured in an early morning attack on Wednesday when a driver crashed his pickup truck into a crowd celebrating New Year's Day in New Orleans' French Quarter and opened fire. Law enforcement officials said the suspect died after a shootout with police. The incident at 3:15 a.m. occurred at the intersection of Canal and Bourbon Streets during New Year's celebrations. Bourbon Street is a historic tourist destination in the city's French Quarter, known for attracting large crowds with its music and bars. Police said the driver, who swerved around barricades, fired at police and struck 2 police officers from the vehicle after it crashed. The officers were in stable condition. The city hosts the Sugar Bowl, a classic American college football game each New Year's Day, and will also be the site of the NFL Super Bowl on 9 February. An assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's New Orleans field office said a suspected improvised explosive device was found and the FBI was working to determine if it was viable. At least 1 person was killed and 7 wounded when a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside a hotel belonging to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump in Las Vegas. Now, the electric vehicle pulled up to the Trump International Hotel's glass entrance before a large explosion occurred. Las Vegas Sheriff Kevin McMahon said there was 1 deceased individual inside the Cybertruck while 7 people received minor injuries. U.S. President Joe Biden said authorities were investigating any possible link between the blast and an attack earlier Wednesday in New Orleans, in which a truck rammed a crowd, killing at least 15 people and wounding dozens. Tesla chief Elon Musk said that the explosion was caused by very large fireworks and a bomb carried in the bed of the rented Cybertruck, adding that it was unrelated to the vehicle itself. Police said they are still working to establish the cause of the explosion. Biden said there had been indications that the suspect in the New Orleans attack had been inspired by the Daesh group. Meanwhile, McMahon said so far they had no indications that the blast in Las Vegas had any similar links to the group. Impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol resisted arrest for a 3rd day on Thursday after vowing to fight authorities seeking to question him over his failed martial law bid. Now, the embattled leader issued the declaration on 3rd December that led to his impeachment and has left him facing arrest, imprisonment, or at worst, the death penalty. Supporters and opponents of Yoon have since camped outside his presidential residence, while members of his security team have blocked attempted police raids in a dramatic standoff. Yoon has gone to ground but remained unrepentant as the crisis has rolled on, issuing a defiant message to his base days before a warrant expires on the 6th of January. It was, however, confirmed that the impeached leader remains in the capital, Seoul. The opposition lawmakers were quick to condemn Yoon's message as inflammatory, with Democrats Democratic Party spokesperson Jo Seung-Lee, calling him delusional. South Korean officials have previously failed to execute arrest warrants for lawmakers in 2000 and 2004 due to party members and supporters blocking police for the 7-day period the warrant was valid. South Korea's Transport Ministry said on Wednesday it would send the flight data recorder of a plane that fatally crashed on Sunday to the United States for analysis. Now, the ministry said it could take about 2 days for investigators to convert the data to audio files. All 175 passengers and 4 of 6 crew members were killed on Sunday when the Jeju Air jet belly landed at Muan International Airport in the country's southwest and slammed into a sand and concrete embankment at the end of the runway, where it burst into flames. The Transport Ministry said South Korean investigators have extracted the data from the plane's cockpit voice recorder and will convert it into an audio file, hopefully offering critical information to try to explain the few minutes that led up to the crash.
한미 합동조사팀이 공항 내 임시 본부를 마련하고 현장 조사를 지속 진행 중입니다. 사조위는 음성 기록 장치에서 추출한 자료를 음성 파일 형태로 전환하는 작업을 진행 중이며 사조위는 완료 시까지 이틀 정도 소요될 것으로 예상하고 있습니다.
Meanwhile, bereaved families have begun to prepare funerals after authorities finished formally identifying the 179 victims of the country's worst air disaster. Russian gas exports via Soviet-era pipelines running through Ukraine came to a halt on New Year's Day, marking the end of decades of Moscow's dominance over Europe's energy markets. Now, the gas had kept flowing despite nearly 3 years of war, but Russia's gas firm, Gazprom, said it had stopped after Ukraine refused to renew a transit agreement. The widely expected stoppage will not impact prices for consumers in the European Union, unlike in 2022, when falling supplies from Russia sent prices to record highs, worsened a cost of living crisis, and hit the bloc's competitiveness. The last remaining EU buyers of Russian gas via Ukraine, such as Slovakia and Austria, have arranged alternative supply, while Hungary will keep receiving Russian gas via the Turk Stream pipeline under the Black Sea. But Transnistria, a breakaway pro-Russian region of Ukraine's neighbor Moldova, also reliant on the transit flows, cut off heating and water supplies to households early on Wednesday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, writing on the Telegram messaging app, said the end of gas transit through his country to Europe was one of Moscow's biggest defeats and urged the US to supply more gas to Europe. In a separate development, Russia launched an aerial attack on the center of Kyiv in the first hours of 2025, killing 2 people and drawing fresh anger from officials towards Moscow. Now, the attack, a rare strike in the heart of the Ukrainian capital, came just hours after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed in a New Year's message that he would do everything possible to bring the war to an end over the next 12 months. Ukraine's state emergency services said 2 were killed, 6 wounded, and 4 pulled from the rubble after Russian drones were fired towards the capital. Local officials said the damage was caused by falling debris, suggesting the drones had been intercepted. Ukrainian officials said the Russian drones targeted the capital's Prishesky district, home to the presidential palace and government quarter. Apartment blocks were hit, and Ukraine's central bank said one of its buildings in the city center was damaged in the attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly threatened to strike at the heart of Kyiv in recent weeks, an attack he said would be a response to Ukraine firing US-supplied weapons on Russian territory. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te said on Wednesday that he welcomed equal, dignified, healthy and orderly exchanges with China. However, he inquired whether there was goodwill from Beijing, given what he said were their blocking of simple things like tourism. Speaking at a New Year's Day news conference, Lai said China was blocking normal interactions with restrictions on Chinese tourists visiting or students studying on the island, while similar bans do not apply to Taiwanese going to China. The Chinese military operates around Taiwan on a daily basis and last year staged 2 rounds of war games near the island. Lai said that the greater the threat from authoritarian countries, the more democracies should unite, and pointed to China and Russia's militaries operating together in the Indo-Pacific. Lai, who took office in May, has regularly offered talks with China, but has been rebuffed. China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and detests Lai as a separatist. Lai, however, says only Taiwan's people can decide their future. Saudi Arabia on Wednesday launched a humanitarian air bridge to Syria, delivering food, shelter and medical supplies. Now, the air bridge, established by the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Centre, or KS Relief, aims to alleviate the effects of the difficult conditions currently facing the Syrian people. Others, including the European Union and Ukraine, have also announced aid for Syria, where the United Nations said 7 out of 10 people need support. Abdullah Al-Rabia, the head of KS Relief, stated that Riyadh's air bridge will be followed by another land bridge in the coming days. Syria has been devastated by 13 years of civil war, as well as Western sanctions targeting the government of deposed President Bashar al-Assad. Millions have been displaced, while the economy and civil infrastructure are in tatters, with a World Health Organization analyst saying last week that approximately half of the country's hospitals are out of service. A high-ranking Saudi delegation had visited Damascus and met Syria's new leader Ahmed al-Shara'a, whose opposition force group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham led the overthrow of Assad on the 8th of December after a lightning offensive. Singapore's economy exceeds expectations, growing by 4% last year. That and more coming up next. Singapore's economy beat forecasts to grow 4% in 2024, despite a slowdown in the fourth quarter. Now, the Singaporean Trade Ministry said the city-state's economy accelerated from the 1.1% growth registered in 2023. The figure surpassed the government's revised forecast made in November for full-year growth of around 3.5%. Singapore's economic performance is often seen as a barometer of the global environment because of its heavy reliance on international trade. Growth in the final quarter of last year came in at 4.3%, according to preliminary estimates by the Trade Ministry, easing from 5.4% in the third quarter. Manufacturing, a key pillar of the export-driven economy, expanded 4.2% in the fourth quarter, down from 11.1% in the previous 3 months. The sector grew 3.5% for the full year, reversing a 4.3% decline in 2023. Construction was more robust in the fourth quarter, expanding 5.9% from 4.7% in the 3 months to September. The services sector rose 4.3% from 4%, led by wholesale and retail, as well as accommodation and food services. Now, the Chinese automotive market is poised to maintain good performance and make progress while ensuring stability, with a notable growth of about 30% in new energy vehicles, or NEV, sales in 2025. Now, China EV 100 Forum serves as a third-party think tank aimed at boosting the development of the EV industry. It predicts that a total vehicle sales in China will reach approximately 32 million units in 2025. It added about 26 million units sold in the domestic market, reflecting a growth rate of 3%. In the NEV segment, total sales, including exports, are expected to hit 16.5 million units, with domestic demand anticipated to reach 15 million units, leading to a market penetration rate exceeding 55%. Experts at the forum note that plug-in hybrid and extended-range electric vehicles will play a crucial role in driving sales growth in the NEV sector. Now, experts also predict a comprehensive acceleration in the intelligent transformation of the NEVs in 2025, with smart cockpits and autonomous driving features becoming a standard equipment. Artificial intelligence technology is poised to revolutionize the automotive industry. Furthermore, the year of 2025 is poised to be a pivotal one for the international expansion of China's NEVs, with Latin America, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and the West Asia region to be key overseas markets. Romania and Bulgaria became full members of the Schengen zone on Wednesday, expanding the borderless area to 29 members and ending a 13-year wait for the two Eastern European countries. Now, the expansion made possible when Austria and other members dropped their objections to the former communist countries joining, officially took place at midnight on the 1st of January. Romania and Bulgaria, both members of the European Union since 2007, were partially included in the Schengen zone in March, eliminating border checks at ports and airports. But Austria has threatened to veto their full entry over migration concerns, which means that controls still applied at land border crossings. Vienna backed off its veto threat in December after the three countries reached a deal on a border protection package, clearing the way for Romania and Bulgaria, two of the EU's poorest countries, to join Schengen. Created in 1985, the zone will now include 25 of the EU's 27 members, as well as Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, covering a total population of more than 400 million people. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei called for Syrian resistance during a speech ahead of the 5th death anniversary of Iran's slain Revolutionary Guards commander Qasem Soleimani. He said this in a speech in Tehran, Iran, that reviving the resistance front was Soleimani's constant goal. 3rd January marks 5 years since Soleimani was assassinated in a United States missile strike in Iraq, a death which caused a spike in already fraught tensions between Iran and the United States.
دشمن و متجاوزین در رأس همه اونها آمریکای طماع و جنایتکار مجبور خواهند شد دست از سر مردم منطقه و ملت‌های منطقه بردارن و با ذلت از این منطقه انشاءالله خارج بشن.
Khamenei added that stability and power have been taken away from Syria, and this will lead to chaos, anarchy, and territorial occupation. Earlier this month, opposition force fighters drove then-President Bashar al-Assad to flee after more than 13 years of civil war in Syria and ending his family's decades-long rule. Zimbabwe officially abolished the death penalty Tuesday after President Emerson Mnangagwa signed into law an act that will commute to jail time the sentences of about 60 prisoners who are now on death row. Now, there has been a moratorium on executions in the southern African country since 2005, although courts have continued to hand down the death sentence for crimes including murder, treason, and terrorism. The Death Penalty Abolition Act, published in Government Gazette Tuesday, says courts can no longer deliver a sentence of capital punishment for any offence, and any existing death sentence would need to be commuted to jail time. However, one provision says the suspension of the death penalty may be lifted during a state of emergency. At least 59 people were known to be under a death sentence in Zimbabwe at the end of 2023. The Herald newspaper reported in February that there were 63 death row inmates who would likely have to return to court for resentencing once the death penalty was scrapped. 24 countries across sub-Saharan Africa have abolished the death penalty for all crimes, while 2 additional countries have abolished it for ordinary crimes only. Mnangagwa had been a vocal opponent of capital punishment since he was sentenced to death in the 1960s for blowing up a train during the guerrilla war for independence. The sentence was later commuted. Smokers in Italy's financial and fashion capital of Milan risk being fined for lighting up on city streets or crowded public areas after the country's toughest ban came into effect on Wednesday. Now, those who defied the new prohibition in the polluted northern Italian city could be fined between 40 and 240 euros. Milan's air quality ordinance, passed in 2020 by the City Council, called for progressively stricter bans on smoking. Starting in 2021, it was forbidden to smoke in parks and playgrounds, as well as bus stops and sports facilities. The latest smoking ban, effective 1st January, applies to all public spaces, including streets, with the exception of isolated places where it is possible to maintain a distance of at least 10 meters from other people. Local officials say the measure is aimed at reducing airborne particulates to improve the quality of the city's air, to protect the health of citizens, including protection from passive smoking in public spaces. Now, the ban, which comes ahead of the Milan Cortina 2026 Winter Olympics, does not apply to e-cigarettes. Situated in the middle of the industrial Po Valley and choked with road traffic, Milan is one of Europe's most polluted cities in terms of air. A gunman in Montenegro killed at least 4 people, including 2 children, after opening fire on Wednesday inside a restaurant in the historical capital of Cetinje and then going outside and continuing to shoot. Now, according to police and local media reports, a brawl at the restaurant preceded the shooting, with a number of people killed on the premises. The gunman, who remained at large, then left the restaurant, shooting and killing 2 children on the street. In a live TV broadcast from outside a medical center, Montenegrin Prime Minister Milojko Spajic called on the incident as a terrible tragedy and declared 3 days of national mourning. He did not mention the number of casualties, but said 4 people had been transferred to a hospital in Podgorica, the capital, for surgery. Cetinje was eerily quiet and snow-covered streets were literally empty, except for law enforcement on Wednesday. Cetinje sits in a shallow valley surrounded by rugged mountains. Mass shootings are comparatively rare in Montenegro, which has a deeply rooted gun culture. Despite strict gun laws, the Western Balkans remains awash with illegal weapons dating back to World War I. Still to come in sports, Arsenal maintain winning ways to close in on league leaders Liverpool. Kicking off our sports segment this afternoon, Arsenal closed the gap on Premier League leaders Liverpool to 6 points as Gabriel Jesus extended his hot streak in a 3-1 win at Brentford on Wednesday. Now, runners-up to Manchester City for the last 2 seasons, Arsenal are unbeaten in 12 games in all competitions, a revitalizing run that now includes 4 successive wins. Mikel Arteta's side were rocked by Brian Mbeumo's first-half goal at the G-Tech Community Stadium. But Arsenal refused to be blown away on a wet and windy evening in West London as Jesus equalised before the break. It was the Brazilian's 6th goal in his last 4 games after he scored just once in his first 20 matches this season. Mikel Merino and Gabriel Martinelli netted in quick succession soon after halftime to ensure Arsenal moved into second place above Nottingham Forest. Arsenal's first Premier League game of 2025 provided compelling evidence that they are ready to compete in the title race with Liverpool, who have a game in hand on the North Londoners. And on to tennis, Australian wildcard Kimberly Birrell stunned second seed Emma Navarro on Wednesday, while the doubles act of Novak Djokovic and Nick Kyrgios came to a shuddering halt at the Brisbane International. In the opening match on the Pat Rafter Arena, Birrell matched world number 8 Navarro stroke for stroke to put a dent in the Americans' Australian Open preparations. Now, Navarro had a stellar 2024, going deep in all 4 Grand Slams, including a run to the semi-finals of the US Open. She was expected to brush aside the challenge of 26-year-old Birrell, who has never broken into the top 100 in her 10 years of the WTA Tour. But the Australian, who trains at the Queensland Tennis Centre and is ranked 113, was not intimidated and delighted her home crowd with a nerveless display. Birrell, who will face 35th ranked Russian Anastasia Potapova in the last 16, said she embraced the role of the underdog. In the doubles, the journey of Novak Djokovic and Nick Kyrgios ended with a 6-2, 3-6, 10-8 defeat with top seeds Nikola Mektic and Michael Venus, who advanced to the quarterfinals of the Brisbane International on Wednesday. Kyrgios, playing his first tournament since a wrist surgery in September 2023, was beaten by Frenchman Giovanni Pericard in a battle of big servers in men's singles on Tuesday. The Djokovic-Kyrgios duo come within 2 points of a win, but an untimely double fault in the match tiebreak allowed Mektic and Venus to clinch the nail-biter. Elsewhere, Kazakhstan shattered Germany's title defense at the United Cup on Wednesday and secured their place in the semi-finals of the mixed team tennis tournament. Elena Rybakina put Kazakhstan ahead with a comprehensive 6-3, 6-1 victory over Laura Siegmund in the first match of the tournament's knockout stages. Germany suffered a blow when world number 2 Alexander Zverev withdrew from the quarterfinal tie with a bicep strain minutes before his match. His replacement, Daniel Masur, began well, but Alexander Shevchenko prevailed 6-7, 6-2, 6-2 to give Kazakhstan an unassailable 2-0 lead in the tie. Shevchenko significantly cut down on his unforced errors after the first set and asserted himself more in a brilliant comeback. In Sydney, Iga Swiatek inspired Poland to a 2-1 victory against the Czech Republic in Group B that put them into the quarterfinals. Thomas Machac put the Czech Republic ahead with a 7-5, 3-6, 6-4 victory against Robert Hukaz. World number 2 Swiatek brought Poland level with a hard-fought 6-3, 6-4 win against Karolina Mukova. She returned to team up with Hukaz to beat the Machac-Mukova pair 7-6, 6-3 in the deciding mixed doubles to secure their place in the last 8. Meanwhile, the United States beat China in Perth, Australia on Wednesday to make it through to the semi-finals of the United Cup. Coco Gauff and Taylor Fritz won their respective single matches against their Chinese opponents to put the US in the last 4. Gauff downed an erratic Zhang Shuai 7-6, 6-2 to give her team a perfect start. The American looked under pressure in the opening set, but found a way to get out of trouble before asserting herself. Gauff made amends for her 9 double faults in the match, with 14 fewer unforced errors compared to her opponent's 40. Fritz downed Zhang Zijun 6-4, 6-4 to clinch the tie for them with the mixed doubles to spare.
Dengan semangat pantang mundur, aksi perjuangan terus diledakkan. Dalam pertembungan seterusnya, berdepan pasukan Helang Merah. Perlawanan bola sepak Liga Super. Jumaat 10 Januari, Kelantan Darul Naim FC bertemu Kedah Darul Aman FC 8.30 malam di saluran OK dan saluran Sukan RTM. Saksikan juga secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
And that wraps up World Today this time round. In our top story today, Palestinian Authority orders suspension of Al Jazeera broadcasts. I'm Mohanapriya, Malaysia Madani. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for your company.